Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Politically Depressed. As always, I'm your host, Ayman McAdam. Today, I'm going to be talking with one of the guests, one of the other invited participants from the People's Want. Their name is Doqsi. They're an Egyptian activist living in Berlin. And we hit it off. I hit it off with a lot of people, but definitely had a fun chemistry with Doqsi. And so, yeah, I thought I'd have them on to talk about their reflections of the festival, the context in which they've been working in, and, how the experience of the festival was for them based on that context. And, yeah, talk about how fucked up Germany has been in the last year, and many other topics, of course. But before I get into it, or we get into it, Doxy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Doqsi. I'm Egyptian living in Berlin now for more than around 10 years, I would say. I would carefully call myself an activist. Um, yeah, I mean, that would be my introduction. Egyptian living in Berlin, that's it.
Yeah. 10 years though, that's a
10
long
years,
time.
it's,
Yeah.
yeah, time to go already.
Yeah. I feel like it's
Time
been
to
an,
flee.
I feel like it's
Mm.
been a long time for me, but whenever I talk to other people, they're like, 3 years, it's nothing, you're new.
Yeah, well,
But it is grating. It is a very kind of there's a weight. Vienna is much less than Berlin, obviously. But anyway, so I think first things first. Yeah, I obviously talked in the last episode a lot about my experience
mhm,
of the People's Want. It was
mhm.
my second time. This was your first time.
It
And
was my first,
so I don't know, how was it for you?
Um, I mean, I have to admit, like, till now, I'm still digesting all the things that have happened. It's kind of like was refreshing. I would I would say it was really fascinating as well, like meeting all those people from all over. I mean, with different struggles. But for me, what was really refreshing. It was like coming from Germany and in
Yeah,
times of despair when everyone felt completely in total despair. I mean, the people couldn't. I mean, being tired, being completely tired and exhausted, and I would say psychologically defeated as well.
mm,
So for me, it was like really fascinating to meet a lot of Lebanese activists that they are working on the ground. And after the time of the festival, they are going back and we
yeah,
will keep on working. So that was very inspiring um, and made me like to think to take a step back. Um, One of the most, I would say, like really refreshing discussions was the state of emergency. And this is what the people like in Berlin like felt the whole time. We are in a state of emergency.
mm,
We're just running, running, running. I mean, from one protest to the other, uh, to the laws that they are changing, I mean, the whole movement is on the run. And every day there is something new. Um, but what I found like really important is to take a step back and to look at the bigger picture. And I would say like that was like the work of the retreat that I felt like I can breathe for a second.
yeah. No, I mean, and that's definitely how I felt last time. This time there was a lot of that for me, but also
Mm,
because the situation in Lebanon is so intense and has
hmm
definitely intensified in the last few weeks, I found myself not fully being able to disconnect. There was one meeting where I did have to just like step out, and there was like a very specific thing that was happening. The army was sent, like the riot police and the regular
hmm
police were sent to evict people who were displaced from the south from a hotel.
hmm
And there was like a protest that formed outside of it, and I was following it. Like I just saw a notification. I was in the middle of the meeting, and I just had to get out because I don't know. It was also intense, but for the most part, There is definitely that feeling being there where, yeah, you're reconnected with the totality of this all. Like,
Hmm.
obviously, I find myself very depressed sometimes sitting and just thinking of everything, not just Palestine, not just Lebanon, not just like the far right rise in Europe that's coming from the center, but climate collapse, but just like the innumerable struggles around the world. And so, yeah, I mean, not just these people coming from Lebanon, but also these people still working like in Palestine that have never
Yes.
stopped working.
Yes.
Or even in locales in areas that, yeah, I just don't think about because I'm very focused on our region, and seeing amazing stuff happening there, and
Yeah.
people continuously struggling there in Myanmar, in India,
Mm.
in Chile,
Totally.
and
Yeah, yeah, no, 100%. I remember the moment about the hotel because you were watching on the on your phone, and I also like, I mean, I got the notification afterwards and seeing what was happening and how emotional the whole thing.
hello,
Um,
there was
mm,
something really great though. I remember that because my phone turned off. I had to
mm,
charge it. I went down, and it was you and Isra and a few other people. And I came down, and the first thing I did, I sort of asked Isra for a hug. And then when I'm talking to you all about it,
mm,
there's that just immediate understanding.
yeah,
I mean, here in Vienna, my main thing is the loneliness of it all. I just, it is so hard to meet anybody that I can at all trust, let alone feel
mm,
like I can open up and just, because in that moment, if anybody were to ask me or to be like, well, it's the landlord's right, I would have lost my shit. Like it
yeah,
would have just broke me. I would have gotten into a fight.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
so it was something very, I mean, you used the word refreshing. I've been using the word nourishing, but
mm,
just comforting and rare mostly to be in a
mm,
space where there's so much mutual understanding about the hardships of the struggle, about the kind of, it's not just a thing of analysis or it's not just a, we're not here to debate. Like we're here to learn and to grow together.
mm.
Um, so I don't know,
And
that's really refreshing for me.
yeah, I agree, and it's a holistic thing. It's
Mm,
not only because I mean this is what I find it also sometimes like really difficult with some of my German friends. They empathize with Palestine. They will empathize more with Lebanon than Palestine because I mean they know the cool friends in Lebanon.
mm,
I mean we're talking about like people lived in the Middle East, so it's not like like random Germans that only read that in the news.
yeah,
Um, but of course, it's like because they had a good time in Beirut
yeah.
and they have like the secular, like friends or liberal friends or, that they went clubbing with and so on.
Mm,
And so they are getting more affected. But I mean, for me, it's like, it's not about empathy. It's since last year, it's only the people that I can connect to, the people that it is in their heart. I mean, it's your thing. It's not that like you're empathizing with people because they
yeah.
are fighting for their liberation. It's you feel it, and that created a bond. And I
Mm,
would say, I mean, unlike in Vienna, and yeah, I'm not really aware also about the entire movement, but there is a movement, and something has been built. So there is a community that has been built, which is really, really interesting and really fascinating, and how the people like connected to each other,
of activists
um,
in Berlin.
of activists in Berlin. I mean, there are a lot of positive things that you can think about it, and this is, I would say, one of the things that when I talk, like when I went away for the retreat, it made me think about all these things, you know, because in the heart of, I mean, in the moment itself, I mean, I couldn't see that. I couldn't see any positivity. We just feel constant defeat, you
Mm,
know? Um, and I would say I would have a lot of people that I can talk to. And there are a lot of people that I cannot talk to. As you said, I mean, like it's impossible where to start. If someone's saying like the landlord has the right, like
Yeah.
like to evacuate, it's like where to start? Is
Yeah.
okay. I mean, like, yeah. I mean, I even like with some friends, I couldn't. I mean, I couldn't talk to, and I would say that they are not friends anymore. I
Yeah.
mean, leftists, Marxists. I mean, that turned out to be anti-Deutsche,
Mm. Yeah,
which I don't
we're
know.
gonna have to talk about this a bit. Yeah,
Oh
because
my God, I'm not gonna explain what anti-Deutsche means.
no, no, no,
Really,
not at all. That's it.
Yeah.
No, it is also something funny. Like when I was thinking, preparing a bit for this episode and a Muffy prepar.
Yeah.
There's no preparation, but as in,
Mm,
um, yeah, we are two Arab leftists, both within like Germanic centers.
mm-hmm.
That's quite specific. And like I was talking to some people there about how like the word like anti-fascist is now a bit of a red flag for me.
Yeah.
And they're like, "What do you mean? Why?" And I'm like, "Oh, right, right, right. So in Vienna,
So let me explain.
yeah." And but again, I'm finding myself in the last period of my life, like I don't know, I'm in a different place. I'm not trying to explain to people. I'm so like emotionally unavailable to have those conversations, and I just jump right into it. Like I just tell them like the amount of stickers that I've ripped off the walls in Vienna of
Mm,
like anti-fascist action with the Israeli flag
yeah.
and the Kurdish flag. Like there's certain levels of just you what?
It's completely
I have met yeah, I've literally met Kurds here. Part of this
insane.
it just it blows my mind and it
It just like, to be honest, like, why do you have the anti?
why do you have the
Just take
anti? Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
just take the anti away. You're just fascists. I
Yeah.
mean, that's it. I mean, if you are supporting a fascist state, you are a fascist.
Yeah.
It's very simple. I mean, just take the anti.
I
I
hate this though because I do find myself then. I mean, and I'm not saying we're wrong at all, but the whole thing of the anti-fascists are the real fascists is was for the longest time a right-wing talking point out of the
mhm,
US.
yeah.
Because they're the ones that use these illiberal methods or whatever. But it's
Hmm.
like, no, that's not no, yeah, like you're saying, they're fascists because they're supporting in the moment of genocide. But aside from that, it just blows my mind. I don't know. So I can't, I used to have those sort of metrics. I'd meet someone and like a few questions, like, "Oh, okay, you're cool, we can talk."
Yeah.
But now I just don't know anymore. Or
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just very, very suspicious, and I just don't really talk to many people.
I completely understand because it's also like since last year, I'm just sometimes in a moment while you are in the underground or taking public transport,
Yeah,
and then you look at the people around
yeah,
you and you say, it's like, what are you standing for? I have no idea. Are you
mm,
supporting a genocide? Are you fine with that? And it's insane. It's like, I mean, I mean, Berlin is traditionally a leftist, like city with, I mean, a lot of like pockets where, like a leftist scene, the culture was, flourishing to a certain extent. It's a hub.
yeah.
But now it's like there are places, the anti-Deutsche places, that they would ban Jewish activists because they are pro-Palestine.
Yeah.
Imagine that. I mean, at some point, it was a protest that you would have like a German police coming up to a daughter of, like, I don't know, Holocaust survivors, and telling her what she should say and what she shouldn't, that might be considered anti-Semitic.
No, and I
Uh,
mean there's so much to analyze. I actually read a really, really good essay by a friend of mine, Adnan, I forget his last name.
mm,
Um, I think he's basically coined a term to describe this German mentality. That's really
mhm,
like it. He calls it German redemption theology
mm,
because the way these people talk, first of all, it's got shit to do with guilt, right?
mm,
But it almost is religious. Like it is
it is.
the way it's so uniform and the way that they can't really explain what they're doing, or rather they're all using the same language of, for instance, anti-Semitism, and it
Mm,
just does not. conflict with then, you know,
Yeah.
bludgeoning even Jewish fucking activists
No.
with the term anti-Semite, or then it being white Christian males. Sorry, it doesn't matter about males, but it is a very patriarchal
Mm.
domination thing. Um, it's theological, and I don't know. It's. I want to do a whole thing actually of like psychoanalyzing the German mind
Yeah.
at the moment because it is almost ridiculous. It would be ridiculous if it wasn't so like terrifyingly like brutal. You know, there are still standing insane amounts of weapons to the state of Israel.
Yeah, and the
Also the
chancellor is coming out and saying that explicitly. Is like, I don't see anything wrong. We're gonna send 100 million euros of weapons, worth
uh,
of weapons. I mean, you have the minister, the green minister, supposedly a feminist, coming out and saying after 1 year of the genocide that it's also, I mean, understandable that you target like that you bomb civilian targets.
mm,
And I was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
I mean,
She went to
what?
Lebanon. She to
Yeah.
do basically like a girl boss photo shoot on a runway and basically say the exact same thing for Lebanon that she was saying about in Gaza, that like, well, if
Hmm?
they hide behind civilian targets, then those civilian targets lose their legitimacy or whatever. And it's just
Yeah, yeah. And she said like
unbelievable.
they put us into a difficult in a difficult situation. I was like, who are we?
But who
It
are
was
we? But
us.
also, it's the most German thing, actually.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a bit difficult. And
yeah.
it's like, I don't know. Therefore, you should die. Like it's like it was a very honestly the white supremacist bureaucracy, like that even manifests into the language, terrifies me.
It's
My only
insane.
yeah. Sorry. Anyway, we got really deep into that. But yeah, like even just the scenes of police brutality in Berlin have been crazy. Can you talk a bit about, I don't know, like the protests, the vibe or anything, or the last year? I'm very
I mean,
curious, actually.
police violence has been always increasing, constantly increasing. And I would say, I mean, since the beginning of the movement, it was a crackdown. They wanted to stop everything. They didn't want in the beginning even for the people like to get, like to register for protests. But I mean, they couldn't. I mean, I think like at some point they they came to the point that they cannot do that. So they tolerated like I don't know the protests. But since the beginning of the movement from last year, it's a constant crackdown, and it increases like sometimes, not sometimes. I mean, it's constantly increasing, including things that we didn't even expect. I mean, like we see that you see the scenes. I mean, every every protest, like in a weekend, some people end up in a hospital. One time they called like the helicopter ambulance.
Oh shit.
It's it's insane. They are sending maniacs. Just the biggest. I mean, in a Atlanta protest, they send like the biggest men. I mean, I've
What's a
seen like
Flinta protest?
uh I mean, Atlanta. You know the term like Flanta, right?
Eesh, I've definitely heard it.
So Flenta is, I mean, it's supposedly a German abbreviation, which is like, I mean, female, lesbian.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so
Intersex, non-trans,
yeah,
non-binary, trans.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. So everything that is cis man.
Yeah.
And in Atlanta protest, they are sending like, like the biggest men. I mean, they
Hmm.
look like Vikings, full of hatred. And in the beginning, we thought, okay, I mean, the police. I mean, I knew from before that like the German police is quite brutal. But I mean, for me, it's like coming from Egypt is like, okay, they're still like, in
Yeah, yeah,
comparison, quite mild, And I was like always joking with my German friends, is like, yeah, I come
yeah,
from
yeah.
Egypt. But like when we see like I don't know the G7 like when they took place in Hamburg, I mean the police was insane. Um, but with the Palestinians, just a completely different level. Is a completely different level.
Mm.
And I
And now,
believe they have the green light from the above.
yeah.
It's something systematic that we can do whatever we want to those people. We can do
Yeah.
whatever we want. And this is insane. It's entirely insane. Uh, it's not that like even the people that they've been on the ground being activists in the last 20 years, they are still in shock, you
Mm.
know, uh, how bad the crackdown, and it's on every level. They are trying that legal, you know. I mean, now they try to pass like a new resolution, which is like protection of Jewish life in Germany, which is basically a crackdown movement.
Yeah.
Conflating anything that it's against Israel that is against Jewish people is anti-Semitic, which is ridiculous. But yeah, it's been really hard and everything. I mean, what I have to admit is like what's good. It's everything is really documented. I mean, there are people in the movement, they document every little incident that took place. Yeah. So it's always like they are fighting the whole time. Like you cannot say that slogan. In the beginning, you couldn't say genocide.
Mm.
You know, they tried that. But of course the people fought hard. So it came to the point that you cannot say the I mean I feel afraid even like to say it now. Like to say from the river to the sea, for instance. You know?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean
It does keep coming up, and
it's a crime. It's a crime. It's a terrorist slogan. It's
well,
being
yeah,
said.
designated.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's like, and then there's just so much projection. There's so much when they say the kafia is the new swastika, or that yeah, from the river to the sea is the new, or no, Free Palestine is the new Heil Hitler. Like this is on Das Welt. This is on the like the newspapers. Like it's not a massive one, but it's still huge, and there's not a critical opposition, or there's not a serious opposition within it. Like there are certain things that everything that they've ever said about like Saddam or about Bashar, as
Yeah.
valid as it may be, or
Mm,
as like Kim Jong Un,
mm,
they're doing like the same, or like Stalin is the OG
mm,
one, and
yeah.
literally the Photoshop,
Mm,
that they have this photo on, I think, The Economist of the
mm,
protest, the revolution in Bangladesh,
mhm,
where they overthrew the prime minister. And the protesters themselves draped, I don't know which building, with the national flags of Bangladesh and of Palestine. And
mm.
then when The Economist posts the photo, they literally Photoshop that one
Yeah.
out, which is, or then I think something about actors, if they have a pin and they just put a different photo.
Mm.
And it's gone
It's
to the point, and I think you'd agree that, like, especially in Germany, like it's gone beyond like a solidarity movement. Like there
mm,
is a struggle within Germany against this German fascism, which is coming from the center,
mm,
which obviously is very tied to the state of Israel, to what's happening in Palestine. But that crackdown is internal as well. Like it's very, very, and it's a plan.
mhm.
Um, and I don't know. It just feels like a lot of the things that resulted in the rise of fascism part
Mm,
one in the 20s and 30s and ultimately the 40s in Germany. Those root things, the white supremacy, the capitalism, the bureaucracy, um, none of those things were addressed. So like there's this whole thing, obviously, that denazification never really happened.
it
They
never
banned
happened.
they banned the party that, yeah, but those root causes are
Yeah.
are now just so emboldened, and they've never gone away, but now they're really um yeah, coming to the
It's
fore.
and it's ironically like the SPD, which is like the center, quote unquote center left, which is it's a joke to call it like that. I mean, they paved the way for the Nazis, and I believe they are
Yeah.
doing the same now. Uh, but
There's a
they
really
don't
scary
see it.
thing in history where it's like the center courts the right. So literally, yeah, in the 20s you had, who were these militias, the right-wing militias that eventually literally became the Nazis.
Hmm.
that were sent to destroy the Spartacus revolution.
Hmm.
And it's just that same tendency is happening now where the center is like, just the center is moving to the right.
Yeah.
And I see in these policemen, you know, the giddiness. This is why I don't give
Mm.
a shit about any discourse about guilt. The giddiness. Finally, we can beat up black and
Yeah.
brown people.
Exactly. It's an opportunity for them that they can do without consequences. And you can see it in the eyes. It's insane. It's insane. It's like how they feel, you feel the vengeance. Feel that they are venging what? I don't know. It's like now we get the chance to beat them up. Um, and they don't care anymore. I mean, even about the reputation of the country, you know? I mean, like they were working so hard, Germany, for a very long time to change, you know, the narrative, how the people, how the world like would see this country. And now they don't care. It's like
Mm,
seeing that. And what I find it like very interesting of also like I don't know what you have said. Of course, the denazification never took place, in my opinion. And the same roots are there to have it again. And what you would see now with the movement, for instance, the biggest protest that took place in Berlin, it was 30,000 people.
mm.
When they plan a protest that it's against the alt-right, it was 250,000
Yeah,
people.
yeah,
And the Palestinians were kicked out.
yeah.
Anyone wearing the kufiyya was harassed. So, I mean, they do not see that the Palestinian uh, case is in the heart of the fight against the alt-right. They do not see that. And ironically, the AfD, the Alternative for Germany, I mean, the extreme right party, is the one now like wants to stop exporting weapons,
Mm.
which is insane in
Yeah.
itself. Just like if you really want to stop arming, you know, like Israel, you might very well like just go and vote for the alt-right, which is insane. Um, I
Which
mean,
is,
of course,
and
I'm
it
not
is,
advocating for that, but
no, no.
you know, it's just
But because there is so much of it that it's like self-harming. Like the Democratic Party lost it like a lot. They lost really heavily in the US elections just a few days ago. And a big part of it is like obviously the advocacy for this genocide, but
Mhm.
also that there's this feeling that they don't really give a shit about their own like ability to get reelected. I don't know how to
Mhm.
describe it. They had no plan, they had no actual messaging, and so much of it is just courting the capitalist class. And like literally Joe Biden ran 4 years ago on this like nothing will fundamentally change, right? He didn't run
Yeah.
on that platform, but that was what his campaign was.
Hmm.
And people want something a bit different. I mean, sorry, I'm not going to get into that, whatever. But the point is at just like a very basic economic national level, yeah,
Yeah.
it's insane to be sending. It just doesn't make sense. It
Yeah.
only makes sense if you're so embedded within this, what I do think is like theological, uh,
Yeah.
like this ideology essentially,
Yeah.
um, whereby it is always a net positive to send more money, more weapons to the state of Israel.
Hmm.
And
I mean, there is a pragmatic, you know, like approach as well. I mean, it is a colonial. I mean, they have the colonial structure. They would support another colonial settler
mm,
project. They wouldn't be with the people. I mean, this is the country that they killed 75% of Namibians.
yeah,
75% of the population. They are not gonna talk about that. They won't talk about that. And all like even if you go like a little bit back in history with the I mean like with the movement that took place in Germany like in the 60s, it was partly that the people like when they knew about the Nazi history, when they were educated on that, they got really shocked. And then they
mm,
went back like to their parents. I was like asking them questions. Like, what did he do? Did you resist?
yeah.
Have you been part of that? And they managed to be silent for a
Mm,
very long time. And this is what I find it like really, really difficult to understand, is like how there is an ability to stay silent
yeah.
while this is happening, you know, complete silence. Because they would find that like too complicated in their minds.
Mm,
But it's not complicated because they don't even examine it, not on an emotional level, not on a pragmatic level, not on any level. Um, and this is like they created an equation that we're no longer anti-Semitic,
yeah.
we're no longer racist. And now, like, I don't know, this is opening up like questions that we don't want to deal with, you know?
So
So yeah,
yeah, I'm
so even like
definitely.
German institutions like will take the money. It's like no, 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 we're not gonna give it like I don't know to the Middle East. Now we're gonna move to Latin America. You know, I
Mm.
think less issues, less problems.
But yeah, I'm definitely gonna send you this essay. Actually, I should have sent it to you before, but I'll put it on the show notes as well,
Mm-hmm,
by Adnan. Redemption theology, because exactly, there's a new identity formed, and he goes through this history very well.
mm-hmm,
He's Bosnian, raised in Germany. Sorry, I don't know if you'd want me to have this info out there. The point
mm-hmm,
is well, I mean, the name Adnan. Anyways, um, but yeah, that like it's literally the whole new. I'm honestly still trying to wrap my head around the analysis because it feels quite deep and
mm-hmm,
is hard to understand because it is hard to understand. Like the word you've used for the last like 40 minutes is insane. Because it's hard to think of like to actually have a concrete analysis.
mm-hmm.
Um, because it just feels so absurd. But for some reason, for them, it seems quite like they're going about it in the most German way possible. Like it's so rational. It only makes
Yeah.
sense. This is of course no. But so he traces this history and he does talk about I think what's called like that sort of amnesia, that
Mm-hmm,
forced amnesia, that comes out in the 60s, but then I think is also reformulated in the 80s with Habermas,
mm-hmm.
whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, with the Frankfurt School. I mean, like,
Mm.
yeah. Yeah.
But so very specifically, and then he sort of like tracks the history of Staatsräson, right? The
Yeah.
German equivalent of Raison d'État, the reason
Mm-hmm,
of the state.
mm-hmm.
And so like there's a vindication. We are not the anti-Semites. You are. We are the civilized. We are the how does he put it in the essay? Like he is they are the saved in a very Christian way.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
are the whatever, you are the sinners.
Yeah.
Um it's a
Yeah.
great essay, yeah. But
No, no, no. It sounds great because I mean, I believe it's like they are just bragging how proud they are of how ashamed they are. You
yeah,
know, it's like we're so proud that we are ashamed, and it just, yeah. I mean, we cannot be that. But in fact, I mean, it is inherently racist to think in this way.
hmm.
And
No,
not seeing that, and not seeing that, it's just sometimes I have to admit, like with certain people, I believe they are genuinely believe that. And this
yeah.
is, I mean, this is it started. I mean, I was talking to a friend of mine and we were saying that like, yeah, it really explains how the rise of Nazis like took place.
Mm,
Because you feel something similar.
yeah.
It's like just collectively, a lot of people they don't see that. They
There
just
is
don't
like
see it.
and it feels so fucked being here because not only do we see that, we like are it. It's not just like I understand what's happening in Palestine. Like it's my family now in Lebanon. And it's like looking at these things on Instagram, seeing the footage directly, hearing them speak, our language, and then going
Yeah.
out in the streets and we're like not even an afterthought. But
Mm.
then it's like honestly for me, the thing that's been really fucked up the last few weeks is how nothing um there was no feeling of a shift publicly after the escalation of the aggression, the Israeli aggression on Lebanon.
Mm. Yeah.
There was just a kind of seamless shift into
Mm.
one genocide, one settler colonial project, um, in the West Bank, and now like full on aggression.
Mm.
And there was just a, I mean, I don't know where I would hear it. Again, I really don't leave the house that much these days because I've kind of learned not to expect. But it's maddening. It's absolutely
Mm.
maddening.
Yeah.
Um, and I just when I go out, I'm kind of like constantly looking over my shoulder.
Yeah.
Um, and again, not just thinking, looking around at people like how many of these people support the essentially the bombing of my city,
Yeah.
but how many of these people served in the IDF?
Yeah.
How many of these people might actually just be Israelis that are like, it's totally fine for them to come and just, they've done a bit of genocide in Gaza, then they come here in their whatever passport.
Hmm.
You know, when I came
Yeah.
back from Beirut like a couple of months ago,
Mm.
my flight arrived at the same exact time as a flight from Tel Aviv.
Mm.
And I was waiting in the passport control with a bunch of Israelis around me.
Yeah.
And I remember so clearly that there was one of these border police guys checking the passports. Every single Israeli that went up to him, his face would light up. I saw him give thumbs ups. I saw him
Hmm.
say, "We're with you." And I
Hmm.
heard at one point said, "You're doing great." And one person's like, "Oh, you see what's happening? You see everything that's happening?" Is yeah, yeah, we're following. And
Mm.
just that, thank God I didn't get him. They put me to someone else and I just went through. I have no idea what that conversation would have been like. Um, but so they're here.
Yeah.
And so again, it's not just the silent whatever. It's not just the racist white people. I mean, also the racist white people. I mean, white people are literally doing fascism again. It's really fucking terrifying.
Yeah. And I think it's also like what since last year, since the beginning of the genocide, then since the genocide begun, I mean, it's also a lot of reflections for us as exilees and diaspora, especially people, I mean, brown people coming from the region. I mean, also like brown people coming from Latin America, from everywhere, is the feeling that it was a lot of reflections of our experiences here, of the subtle racism, that now you can see that those, I mean, that the people are completely fine with killing us. It's completely acceptable for them. It's completely fine. And I think a lot of people, even the people that manage to integrate into the German society, they speak the language fluently, they have good jobs, they, like they became good Germans.
Yeah,
And they are not accepted.
they're
And
always going
now,
to be met with suspicion
yeah, or
because
you
there
would
is
always,
no.
yeah,
Yeah,
or you always would get the question. It's like, yeah, I mean, even if you have, even for the second generation, I mean, of Turks, of like Arabs, I mean, everyone is like talking about like their experience and how racist this country is. Um, and this is came to the, I mean, came to the top. It has been there the whole time, but it came to the top. It's so obvious now.
yeah.
It's like, like I mean, we have seen that for a very long time, but now you put the glasses on. So it's very
Mm.
clear. Um,
No, any microaggression is now just actually full on aggression.
yeah,
And because I think racist Europeans, white Europeans, I think love the state of Israel for many reasons, and one of them is that they are able to practice the Islamophobia,
yeah,
the like actual violence, and so it's like it's cool. That's
yeah,
awesome that they can go in and kill the Muslims, and
yeah.
it's fine. And I mean, you literally did have German white Christian people trying to go join the IDF. Um,
Yeah,
and
yeah. You know the story about the German guy that's like, I don't know when.
yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
just like,
yeah.
I'm dying to kill Arabs. I mean, it's insane. It's insanity.
But like, and that's very rooted. There is a deep tradition in Europe of Islamophobia in that real sense of like literally
Yeah.
wanting to kill and feeling threatened by the barbarian, the Muslim barbarian.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, I mean, dating back to the Crusades. But so anyway, I want to dial back a little bit.
Hmm.
Leno, you brought up a good thing that I think then circles back to the experience at the People's Want, which is the experience of the exilee and then the refugee and the migrants from these regions into the imperial centers.
Mm.
And there was a lot of reflections on that.
Yeah,
And that was definitely a space where that was very present. I mean, again, in the manifesto, but also in some of the workshops, they talked about exile as a point of attack.
yeah,
Because for decades, but even still to this day, but there's sort of new formations. Exile is just this place to languish in. And I mean, there have been traditions, there have been different places wherein, I mean, I definitely know this is true for like Iran, the Iranian student movement and whatever.
yeah,
Um, I'm trying to think of other examples. I mean, the entire Palestinian like, case, the majority of them outside of the country, vast in refugee camps and in exile across the world. But so there is something a bit unique about this space wherein we're talking to so many different people from so many different places, all experiencing the same thing, which I think every individual person experiences differently, which is exile.
mm. Yeah,
But it's almost like a structure that all of us contend with. Um, all of us, I don't consider, I'm not in exile, but as in still the feeling of migration of al-ghurba or whatever.
yeah,
Um, And I mean, I didn't enter into most of any of those conversations per se, but it was just there, you know? Like we're all there and all of our worlds are
yeah,
collapsing.
yeah,
I talked a lot of my conversations were with the Sudanese comrades, but we barely talked about Sudan. We barely talked about Lebanon. But in a
yeah,
way, we were constantly talking about Sudan and Lebanon, you know?
yeah, yeah. No, truly, I totally agree. And this is a sense that it's unifying all of us. It's the experience that we have in the heart of the empire, you know? I mean, the feeling for a lot of people that, I mean, that the exiles that came from a failed revolutions and trying to, to build a new life here. And this has collapsed, I would claim. So the idea is like what I'm taught. I mean, now, like if I'm talking with all my comrades, like in, like Syrians, Sudanese, everyone wants to go back. I mean, the people don't want to live here anymore. Because, I mean, it's essentially that we don't, I mean, the people became like more proud of their, it's not, like more proud of their culture, of their way of life. And to be honest, also for me personally, just like when I took a little bit of a space, I started to appreciate a lot of things. And being very careful not to romanticize Egypt, or the culture. There are a lot of things that are going wrong, on a cultural level as well. That needs, I mean, but I would like to go back there and fight. I
Yeah.
feel here it's not my fight. I don't want to fight for for the white people, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Or
And this
talk
is,
to them and trying to like wake them up and be like, where are
yeah,
you
it's
guys?
just
Yeah.
like, guys, I mean, you're doing it wrong again.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I don't want that. I would like to go back to Egypt and fight my fight. But we don't get the chance to do that because, how it works. I mean, the war in Lebanon is being heavily, supported by the West. So, I mean, we are trapped. I mean, Sisi's regime is getting like 7 billion euros of aid, like or whatever, like from the EU, seven
Yeah.
billion euros. It's basically a bailout. It's exactly like what they have done, like to the banks in 2008. So the system is about to collapse. El Sisi's regime is about to collapse, and we're gonna save this regime
Hmm.
as long as he's working as a watchdog for us. You're, I mean, you're totally closing, like the northern borders, so no illegal migrants to Europe. He's doing like his part, like in Gaza, of besieging Gaza. Now we know that it's not complicit. They are partners in crime.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, it's just. the feeling of a lot of exiles, diaspora. I mean, just like, okay, I mean, we don't want to be here, but we cannot go back because we cannot fight there. The the tools for fighting is not there anymore. I mean, I'm talking specifically about Egypt. Yeah, but I think, to be honest, till now we didn't fully realize the psychological impact and the impact of last year on all of us. And would definitely require a lot of reflections to understand and to position ourselves.
Yeah. And it's definitely like, it feels like the real conversation that, I mean, we don't have many spaces to have them.
Yeah,
Um, and no one in this moment wants to broadcast defeatism,
yeah,
but the daily humiliation of it all, the exhaustion. I mean, every day for the last year and a half, we've been waking up, a year and let's say 2 months, to massacres in Gaza. And in the last month, add on to all that,
yeah,
daily massacres in Lebanon. And it's been very difficult.
yeah,
And obviously, I mean, I left a few years ago because a big part of it is I could see this war coming. I think it's really important. I talk about this a lot, or rather, who is it? I think it was Tariq Ba'ouni, a Palestinian researcher,
mm,
and I think Al-Shabaka. Uh, I think he gave an interview on Democracy Now! Where he said we need to de-link the genocide from October 7,
yeah,
because this has been a much longer plan. The
yeah,
entire plan for Gaza in the last 2 decades has been to starve it out,
yeah,
incremental genocide,
hmm,
and make it unlivable.
yeah,
And in the same way, I think we need to de-link what's happening in Lebanon from October 8th,
yeah,
from Hezbollah's so-called support front, or solidarity front,
hmm,
because it's very clear it's going above and beyond, and there are bigger what's the word, plans that are sort of being enacted in this moment, where they have this full green light to do essentially just anything they want. And I think
yeah,
a part of it is creating the so-called buffer zone till the Litani River. And
hmm,
they're doing it at the moment just by completely destroying entire villages.
yeah,
It has nothing to do with Hezbollah.
yeah,
It has everything to do with um, ensuring that nothing ever like it can happen again.
yeah,
And this has been the entire history since 1948 of constant resistance from any of these other places. And so, what I'm saying, or why I'm bringing all this up, is because I definitely would not be doing great at all if I were in Lebanon. I
yeah,
am here, and a big part of it is I've been thinking a lot about this experience, and then how to do the work that needs to be done from here. And so, going to this conference and then reading the manifesto and thinking about the longer term plans that the people organizing, the people's want,
yeah,
it's really powerful and gives me a bit of a sort of hope in a new project and a new way of like even conceiving where we are,
yeah,
what we can be doing,
mm,
and how we can be building power across movements.
yeah,
How that's going to happen tangibly, it's still yet to be seen. There, obviously, this is all still discussions. There are some like logistical stuff, but I don't know. I mean, at the very basis, just having those conversations, being in the same space with those people, hearing the stories, and I don't know.
yeah. No, I totally agree with you. Just I found it also very powerful. And I think it's very important to start to have this. It's something being formed, and it takes time, and it takes a lot of time and effort and discussion and commitment. And that's what we need. And this is what I meant, like when I said, like taking a step back.
Yeah.
It's not like really looking at the battle, that what's happening at the moment is realizing a lot of things to know our position. What can we do? And I remember that I was reading also from an Egyptian anthropologist, and he said it's not the time for pessimism or optimism. It's the time to analyze and act.
Yeah.
So pessimism and optimism become irrelevant. And how to encounter that, how to not feel defeated with the
I love,
immense power that you're facing.
there is
Um,
like a really good quote by Gramsci that I've been trying to kind of internalize, although it's very difficult, which is pessimism of the intellect,
Intellect and optimism
optimism
of the
of the
will.
will. Yeah.
Yeah, surely. But how to apply that?
Yeah.
And this is what I find it very. I mean, this is like what the retreat gave me, I would say. It's just to have a little bit of a distance, to even say it's fine to sit and discuss. Because the whole time we feel like the state of emergency. No, there is no time for that.
Mm.
But actually, it is the time for that. And how you protect yourself also psychologically not to collapse. And this is what happened to a lot of people, I would say, that at some point you're just exhausted,
Yeah.
you're tired, which makes perfect sense because you should be tired. And it is inevitable to feel exhausted, but how you keep on going, how you imagine to build something new. Um, yeah, I mean, I believe that what was from the retreat is asking a lot of good questions. Uh, I mean, I wouldn't say that I got an answer,
No.
but asking the good questions, asking quote unquote the right questions. I find it fascinating.
And
Um,
like immediately getting into, because it's just, I don't know. I mean, it was so funny how quickly we move away from small talk, or the small talk is embedded in the thing, you know?
you know,
Um, because yeah, the good questions and they come immediately. It's not like after 2 hours of bullshit and then, finally we get a bit drunk and like, oh, finally they're saying something.
the revelation. Yeah.
But then no, they're at least talking about something interesting as opposed to just like, yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah. Or even like I am also, I mean, I have to admit, I am also tired of, I mean, as you said, like as we were talking in the beginning, I'm just like, I'm not interested to convince someone like, like a white German of why
But
it's
actually,
happening is bad. I move beyond that,
eh. And
you
actually, that's
know?
something that's really funny. I realized like the third or fourth day, the amount of times we take like smoke breaks,
Mm,
and I find myself just, but it's the assumption. It's like
mm,
I the ability to feel safe because I can assume that you know that you're doing stuff, that you're whatever, and hello, we can just talk about, I don't know, Marseille, which I
yeah,
don't know is a beautiful city.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
but
especially if you're coming from Vienna and Berlin, I would
yeah,
say.
yeah.
It's just like, I mean, like you don't see the stickers that like you are seeing, at
No, no,
least.
بالعكس, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and for me, that was like, I mean, it's all the comments like coming from Berlin is like, wow, that exists.
This is in Europe, yeah, yeah.
This is in Europe. It just it tells you like, and Marseille is in France, It's like, one of the worst colonial examples like of all time. Uh, but it just reflects like how shitty the situation is.
Mm.
I
The
mean,
situation, and especially being in Marseille, there was this feeling where it's like, I mean, everyone's speaking French,
yeah,
but again, it's that thing of like, just, I think I barely saw white people when I was there. And it's just the fact that like all these migrant communities, all these like older generation um, migrants from formerly colonized like French areas in like Africa and whatever and in the Caribbeans. And they're all speaking French, and like French is like a language that they've I don't know, I'm trying to find better words for this. I've been trying to describe it for the last like couple of weeks since I'm back. But like a claimed language essentially. In a way that
Mm,
German just is not.
it's not.
No one feels comfortable speaking German
No.
except white Germans.
Yeah.
And
That they will
but
complain that you don't speak German. It's like, you have been here for 4 years. Why you don't speak German?
but again, the best you can do is just be passable. But
No,
there is no, Arab tradition of German poetry or whatever, or um,
no.
Turkish whatever with German songs. No, but that exists with the French,
Yeah.
with the French language.
Mm,
I think a lot about like Fanon writing in French, or
yeah.
like all these revolutionaries, all these post-colonial writers,
Yeah.
Aimé
Yeah.
Césaire and the like. And then there's like traditions with it, but they own it and they kind of talk, and it's like
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if it's something about the language itself or the society. I mean, obviously, there's a big difference between France and let's say Austria or Germany, wherein I don't know, they weren't colonizing this North African place like, 5 minutes south.
Yeah.
I loved Marseille. It was really cool.
Yeah.
It was really fucking cool.
Yeah. That's why everyone was like, okay, we're moving to
Yeah.
Marseille. But at the same time, it's just like, I think, I mean, with Germany, I mean, and this is something, there's a question that I had like 5 years ago. It doesn't even want to admit it's a migrational country.
Mm,
It became like that, I mean, it is like that, but they don't want to admit that. And it's not like that they are attracting the people to learn the language. They are forcing the people to
yeah.
learn the language. I mean, the arrogancy and the
Yeah.
entitlement, it's unparalleled. It's something I've never seen anywhere else. I mean, we all, like when we left, like Egypt, I mean, some people like ended up in US, Canada, Australia, like different parts of Europe and so on. I think Germany is really one of the worst. You cannot integrate.
Yeah.
You can't. And then they would come to you and ask. I mean, of course, like we're. I would say, I would claim I'm fully aware of the amount of racism that the people like face in the US as well. I mean, there's no place that it's just like, wow, it's super nice. I mean, apart from Marseille,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah.
I was surprised with myself, like why I am like overly positive about Marseille. It
Someone
means
told
there
me,
is something wrong,
I think Estra told me a story of you in Marseille where you went into like a shop and you had some trash in your hands and the guy was like, "I can throw that trash for you,"
Yeah,
and you were so shocked.
yeah. The guy was super nice. I was like, what is that? I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, it was extra nice. I mean, it's something that,
I mean, it's not even that nice. I'll throw your trash. I have a trash can right here. But that feeling of just you're dealing with a human
yeah,
as opposed to here you're dealing with, I don't know, another subject of the state. There's like,
yeah,
I do think a lot about bureaucracy and how many layers there are just literally between talking to people.
yeah,
Again, my little thing about Marseille is not just the people say hi to each other in that kind of like nice countryside way, but
yeah,
there's just a kind of acknowledgement of each other's presence,
yeah.
the ease to open up a conversation, or someone would just start talking to me,
Mm,
or I mean, or like I'm in a store and there's just I don't know how to describe it.
yeah,
Like I do have this thing now where I go to this Kurdish small like market. It's like a small store. And I don't know, the guy's on his phone
yeah,
playing a game. And I'm
mm,
like, I mean, he speaks Arabic. They're from Syria. He's
mm,
playing League of Legends on his phone,
mm,
which first of all I found unbelievable. I have no idea
yeah,
how someone can play it. It's such a sort of sensitive game. You have to keep clicking.
yeah,
But then we just start talking, and there's just a kind of, oh, you're a guy. You're not just the guy running this store.
yeah, yeah. Not only a subject. I mean, we can communicate and connect. And it's very telling. I mean, what I find it very interesting. I mean, like when I did my master's here, I mean, the university, it wasn't English. It was like quite international. I don't know, more
Freie
maybe.
Universität?
No, it was in the Bauhaus in Dessau.
Oh.
And it was very interesting. I mean, that was like more than 60 nationalities at least. If I'm not mistaken, it might be even more. But it's just like all the international students, they are still in touch now. And they
Hmm.
all don't have many German friends.
No. No.
So it was always this kind of segregation of the German students and the international ones.
Hmm.
And this didn't, I know friends studied in Spain, it wasn't the same. It's a very enclosed society. I mean, sometimes, I was, and this is something that I loved in Egypt. It's Egyptians, when they see someone coming from Germany, anywhere, of course, like, I don't know, we don't want to, like if we talk about like racism also exists in Egypt and
Yeah, yeah,
how
of
they would
course.
treat, like Europeans different. I mean, you're a Lebanese, you know too well. But at the same time, just the people are curious and they approach the people in a way is like, I would like to know how
Hmm.
you're doing things. What do you eat? There
Hmm.
is curiosity.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
here
Where's
you
yeah?
feel like it's like, no, let's
Do you
keep a
eat food over
distance.
there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like, I mean, it was a funny story. That was like an Al festival here in Berlin. I mean, a friend of mine was driving the artist, and I was like, one of the artists, I mean, they are called in Madfagaya. They are doing this mahraganat.
Hmm.
Uh, it's a very interesting, also like music coming from Cairo. And then they were going like next to the Spree, was driving them there. And then they said, like, what's the name of this Nile?
The name of this what?
Nile,
Uh,
like the Nile River. I mean, he was like, I don't know where to start. It's not the Nile.
uh,
But it's just the interaction is really different. It's like how they approach other people is different. And
Hello,
this
I
is,
think ultimately as well, and it's just there's zero room for introspection.
yeah.
I feel, and I mean, I'm my partner is a white Austrian, and I love them, and they're fine. This isn't about them, or their family, but like I have a window into just how, amongst themselves, and I don't know. I mean, my main thing is it's quite boring.
Mm,
There's like an interest in something, like I will watch something interesting or read something, but I've definitely applied this to the greater society, a lack of interest of anything else.
mm,
And it's that navel gaziness about the whole society that again, yeah, manifests into this like self-hatred,
mm,
anti-Deutsch, like their only conception of leftism is we hate our grandparents and we hate ourselves. But it manifests obviously then into then we hate you.
yeah,
But I think that's what you're describing, like the lack of curiosity. They're just not interesting people because
yeah,
they're not interested in anything else.
yeah.
And and again, set in a world now where, yeah, like people, I don't necessarily believe you can be racist against white people, for instance. Like it's not, the structure
No,
does not exist.
no,
And so no,
no.
and so here, I mean, Germans have this thing where they think racism as a discourse comes from the US. You know what I mean?
It's a joke, yeah.
It's a joke. Like we don't have that. It's an American thing that's coming here, and so there's a rejection of even those discourses. But I don't know. Again, I've been thinking so much about this these days, and I didn't expect this episode to go so deep into like, but it's obviously something that both of us are dealing with in different ways. Um, like where are not just the German white left, but where are the good writers? Where are the good musicians? Where are the artists?
Mm. Where are
Any
the journalists? I
where are the
mean,
journalists? Where's any counterculture?
yeah,
Where's any subversive, oppositional, even in the arts?
yeah.
And I think the only Austrian writer that I know of, he passed away years ago, that is like interesting is Thomas Bernhard
Mm. Yeah.
because he would just shit on the Austrians,
No.
and apparently Austrians hated him.
Mm.
But other than that, I've said this before and I'll say it again, but I look back in history and I look at all the amazing German writers and Austrian writers, and like 90% of them were Jews.
Yeah. Totally.
And so we are living in the still, like very much so, the post-Holocaust Central Europe.
Yeah.
And obviously they're very aware that they view it in a very fucked up way because they somehow, the Germans still see themselves coming out of that
Mm.
better.
Yeah.
We learned our lesson and now we've almost like we've, we've paid for our sins. It's bizarre.
It's
But
bizarre.
so essentially what's happened is that there's like a complete intellectual and social and artistic and cultural lack.
Yeah. And then you would have the ones that the believe they paid for their sons. And you would have the others that the thing they still didn't pay enough, which you will end up with the anti-Deutsche.
Yeah.
So it's like both are fucked up.
Because they have no real introspective sense of like,
Yeah.
I don't know. And they also think of themselves purely in a vacuum. And also, again, and this is an important point in the essay, in connecting it with the sort of what is termed Judeo-Christian theology, that this kind of way that they've been understanding their history cannot make sense when thinking about Namibia,
No.
when thinking about the Roma,
Yeah.
right? When thinking of the
Right.
genocides that they've done, um, because it doesn't fit
Yeah.
into that same whatever.
Yeah. It's creating an image, and whatever doesn't fit, it's like dealing sometimes with a narcissist.
Yeah.
You know, can you deal with a narcissist? It's very hard, but it is something similar. There
And
is they constructed an image, something that is fictional. It's not real. And believing in it so much that became part of the identity.
mm,
And you cannot get out of it because you're gonna lose your identity. You would lose everything.
and a part of the identity is having control over the identity.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I am, who am I? I am the one that decides who I am.
Yeah.
And there's that, I don't like using the term, but I think it's a very powerful one in these conversations, is the sort of epistemological violence, but also
Yeah.
control.
Mhm.
That no one, I can never talk to, you can spend years. I'm sure now you talk to a white German, you will never be close enough to have knowledge about them that's worth value.
Mhm.
You will always be outside it. Um,
Yeah.
because you're not really German. And then
Yeah.
even if you are quote unquote really German, by having those opinions, you cease to be. It's like these Zionists who go to these protests
Yeah.
and tell Jews you're not real Jews.
Yeah. Or you're a self-hating Jew. I mean,
It's all these distancing. It's all this kind of
um,
just
yeah.
you're not an authentic real one because again, the real ones are the ones that already agree.
Yeah. It's denying. It's similar like when you like when you are in opposition to a dictatorship, and then they would start to say that like you're a traitor
Mm.
because you don't agree with the system that is being in place.
Ma, again,
So
I'm
they
sorry.
want to strip away like your identity, your belonging to a country, or.
But what's the, and again, I love this essay actually. I really have been thinking a lot about it, and it's like one of those essays that I think about. It's been a while since this has happened. I've been thinking for days about it. But if we think of this as a religious thing, what's happening in Germany, what is the religious equivalent of treason, of being a traitor?
Yeah,
It's haram.
yeah,
And and so again in the essay he writes this, that it is they who determine what is haram and what is halal.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and so this film, for instance, now the official page of I think the city of Berlin, talking about this film that was directed by an Israeli Jew and a Palestinian
yeah,
from '67. In our land or something. It won the Berlinale, that one.
Yeah,
And the official description of this film describes it as a film with anti-Semitic tendencies.
and it's
Um,
very funny. Do you know the incident when was, I believe, I mean, a green politician that attended this,
mm,
and she was clapping, like, I mean, giving an applause after the movie.
only for him.
Only for the Israelis, not
Yeah.
for the Palestinian. Um, so it was like really funny. I mean, like how it's being said. As someone I'm being in total fear of, like, that you cannot even admit that you like something, that was done partly by a Palestinian.
I think she said something about clapping with one hand or something.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly, but it was something completely ridiculous. Yeah.
But so yeah, I mean, again, we can talk forever, and again, I would really want to do like an actual psychoanalysis because there's something a bit, I mean, empowering for me to reclaim some of this knowledge, even though,
No,
like, as in to be able to describe it as it is in a kind of coherent way,
yeah,
almost like a reversing the microscope, so to say. But I'm also thinking, and like you mentioned things are a bit different in Berlin, because Vienna really feels very provincial, even though it's a big city, it's a cosmopolitan, it's a metropolis, whatever. It feels very provincial.
no,
The Palestine solidarity protests, I think, have never gotten more than like 1,000 or 2,000,
no,
and it's just a bunch of Arabs and like kooky white people,
no,
who I really just don't trust,
no,
and that's it. And so I'm interested then thinking about the opposition, which I'm
no,
not seeing enough of, especially again, I mean, I think a lot about artists and whatever.
no.
But yeah, in Berlin, it's a bit different. And but Berlin also, I don't know, its makeup is a bit different as well.
Yeah. I mean, there is an actual movement,
Mm,
I mean, there is a movement, but there is a huge crackdown. It's just the systematic attack on the movement is very powerful. They are putting everything just to end that. And when you talk about artists, for instance, musicians, I mean, you simply, you're going to be canceled. I mean, academics as well. I mean, just like, I don't know, they stop funding anything that can be controversial from their point of view.
yeah.
So it's just, there are people out there, but it's just like they don't have any resources. They don't have places. I mean, that was like a cultural and place called the Ayun, and they cut the state fund immediately, you know. So they have to leave, I mean, a couple of months, I believe, or by the end of next month. And now they are passing a new resolution that would mainly cut any funds of any organization that being considered anti-Israel. So the crackdown is immense. There are people, but they don't. I mean, they cannot get, they cannot get the fund, they cannot get the visibility. The media entirely is against the movement.
Mm.
So you would have a German journalist that tweeting, you know, uh, like it's just like you don't have any kind of platforms, and that's what's really interesting and fascinating because now there are new places being created, there are new spaces being created. Um, it's very difficult to be honest now, like to quantify that, but it is happening, and now
Yeah.
it's like yeah, I mean, the people like even wouldn't talk to, like if someone from Deutsche Welle would, come and approach you like to talk, they would say, I'm not talking to Deutsche Welle.
Yeah.
This is also something else that the people boycotting,
Mm.
like, state institutions. It's just like, no, we don't want to talk to you. We've seen how you covered like the whole thing in the last year.
Mm.
Um,
There's a similar thing that's happened here. They tell you not to talk to ORF or whatever because yeah, they're just gonna spin it in some bullshit way.
No,
But I don't know. The uniformity of it all is terrifying,
no, I totally agree.
and it's just getting smaller and smaller. Like with nationalism, with the sort of white, like far right white nationalist
Mm,
center. And yeah, they're like you said at the very beginning, they're ceding so much space to things like the AfD
no.
because again, like I do think that's what we saw in the United States. Why would you vote for, light wing right candidate when you can have the real deal?
Yeah, why would
Who-
I have like a cheap copy while I can have the original?
Yeah.
If I'm gonna go Nazi, I would go full
Good.
scale, you know?
Fuck me.
It's like, fuck it. I mean, if we're gonna go the full scale.
But yeah, because the space between them ceases to whatever. Um, I think it might be different with Germany only because I don't know, Olaf Scholz, like I've never seen someone, I don't know, the confidence, the arrogance. It's so German and it's so fucking frustrating. Like they
And plus the
do re
stupidity as well. You might
Yeah,
add
yeah,
this, you
yeah.
know? And
But like you said, if narcissism is a good framework, because there is that kind of um the tendency to think, that the other person
no,
is ignorant, is an idiot, is manipulatable.
no.
Um, but
Yeah.
like I don't
I,
know.
I mean, in comparison, when you see Macron, for instance, like how he's talking, I mean, they would say like, no, 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 we're not sending weapons. You know, I mean, it's like trying to save face. There is at least like it's a completely different mentality. It's like here is like, yeah, we are sending weapons and we will keep doing that.
Yeah.
What are you complaining about? It's also the same attitude of Kamala Harris. Is like, stop, I'm
Yeah,
talking.
I'm talking. She
No,
really
you're
tried to
not
play, yeah.
talking
Yeah.
anymore now because you lost the elections. And no one is going to listen to you now. And we all have to deal with
Blackness.
Donald Trump, you know?
Yeah. But I don't know, it's so now the reaction to that a lot of people are having, I hate it. I mean, literally blaming Arabs, blaming Muslims, blaming people, whatever. Even the Green Party, which I don't give a shit about, but it won like 500,000 votes.
Yeah.
But even them, they have this lack of introspection.
I mean,
There's more of a discourse.
it's just ridiculous. I mean, you're blaming people that being, you know, just being killed on a
Yeah,
daily basis, and you blame them for the failures of the liberals that you know like paved the way like for someone like Donald Trump, and you blame those people. It's just insane. Um,
but also I saw like a post-election poll or whatever, the kind of results that like every single state, or I think 50 of the 51 states, shifted to the right,
yeah.
shifted towards the Republicans.
Mm.
And yeah, I remember David Graeber saying this like 10 years ago, and it's still so applicable, or like 5 years ago, that you have this rise of the right, and the left is sort of represented by these kind of like Macron, Obama type figures.
Yeah.
Not the left, but as in, it has so much of that
Yeah.
capture, but they suck. They're hardcore imperialist capitalists. Um, they have no real alternative, no real plan to deal with anything. Um,
They
and
have nothing to offer. That's the
nothing,
problem.
nothing.
And that's why, I mean, they cannot inspire people anymore because you have nothing to offer them. And this is what you get. I mean, it's a textbook. It's nothing really new. We just like living that. That's the problem. I mean, like when you have a party like being led by Joe Biden, I
Eh,
mean, what the fuck is that? I mean, it is a state of decline. I believe that the Western civilization is in decline.
uh, I haven't heard the word Western civilization in a long time.
Uh, because it's disappearing.
Yeah. No, but yeah, everything that's ever, I mean, all of it is constructed and it's very different and whatever, but this whole liberal democracy model, so much of it is premised on like very illiberal, very undemocratic, whatever, i.e., capitalism. It's like I'm in a safe space, but also it is becoming less and less spa safe.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I'm striving for that opposition. I'm striving for that something alternative.
Yeah.
I'm just not seeing it.
It's I think it is being formed at the moment. It's just the big question, to be honest, is the change will come from where the change will come from. I don't believe it will come from the global north. I
No.
think you can get some support, but it will come from the global south. I believe like the global north is too privileged, even with all the issues that I mean, I'm fully aware that are I mean, I wouldn't talk about US because that's a completely different story. But if we're talking about like Western Europe, I mean,
Mm.
I mean, privileged, rich countries. I am aware that a lot of people are suffering. A lot of white Germans are suffering as well. I know people like have two jobs and cannot make it. And with the recession and everything, uh, it is purely like we have to come back to capitalism. There is no way around because this is the real issue.
Mm.
Um, but at the same time, I don't believe I started to find it very difficult that I can see any kind of change coming from the global north. It will come from the global south.
And I think that's when this whole concept of exile as a point of attack
Yeah,
plays in,
yeah,
because in many ways we are conduits.
no,
But yeah, conduits toward to whom? Because
mm,
in many ways there's just like an irresponsive public around us. I don't know. It's been very interesting being here.
it is
But again,
indeed. Yeah,
bring it back very quickly before we wrap up to the people's want. It was very nice being there. Because yeah, met a lot of people in a lot of different places, also in the global north. Um, Even the white people from the global north I found really like cool to talk to because they're like doing real cool shit, like
of
fucking
course.
going on boats and like helping migration routes between within the Mediterranean. Actual anti-fascists, not
Yeah, like an actual ones.
no, Haram, I was talking to a guy who was like a white French anti-fascist, and I was like, "Oh, anti-fascist, okay, t tell me more," and he was like, "What?" And I'm like, "It's kind of a red flag for me." He's like, "What?" This is the conversation with the guy, like he is an
Yeah,
anti-fascist, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I completely forgot. Sorry,
yeah,
I forgot that Austria isn't Europe,
yeah,
and that Germany isn't Europe.
yeah. True.
That whatever type of thing they try to do with the European Union of like a shared cultural values, gone."
Yeah,
They are definitely splitting. And I mean, that shift is technically coming from the global south.
yeah.
It
I
was forced on them to reckon with this,
yeah.
with that contradiction.
I mean, what I found it like really, what was like about the people's want that was really great. It was like, as you said, like before, about the small conversations. And it's taken me, like I mean, I started now like to slowly to write down like some notes, uh, like with some reflections on the whole thing. It's like the small conversations that I found it very fascinating
Mm,
that opened up like certain questions and even like the idea itself, as you said, like that you meet like actually like anti-fascist white people.
yeah,
I mean, surely they do exist,
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, there is no doubt about that. But like when you're not in touch for a very long time, you feel that okay. I mean, of course, I know here like a lot of anti-fascists, like I mean, mainly would be like from the queer community, I mean, the people in the forefront.
Mm,
Um, there are, but it's just a minority. It is, it's an actual minority.
yeah.
Um,
No, if there's
But
any hope that I see, any like silver, not like pockets, it's within the queer communities
yeah,
in the global north. Like they are, and again, they write about this in the manifesto, like some of the last remaining like groups and communities that still like identify, like politicize their identities in a way.
hmm
Yeah.
yeah,
طيب. I think that was, I mean, that was great. I think this was an example of what those conversations looked like.
yeah. I mean, this is what I want to say is like not sticking to a topic, it's just going with the flow. But I find it I find it very interesting that we just like, hopping from one topic to another, and yeah,
That's how we do things here in Politically Depressed.
yeah,
No, but that's how it was like in the festival.
yeah,
But what was sad is that those conversations constantly get cut short.
yeah,
Because again, there's just like, and then there's so many other people, and then we bring in other, so we could never get too deep into any topic. So I'm glad that we did have space to get deeper into. Um, I mean, but even still, this is such a like specific thing. There's like a whole, I don't know, everything else outside of actually being physically here
yeah.
and being forced to confront with these realities.
Mm.
But anyway, this was nice.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
For those listening, if
Yeah.
you want to support this podcast, just go to our Patreon, patreon.com/from the periphery. If you become a member, you support this podcast. But also you get access to a lot of like cool exclusive content like my sub-series, Keep This Between Us. Do you know about this, Ahmad?
No, I don't.
I have
Tell
a.
me.
I should do this actually. This is a good way to integrate advertisements. Well,
Yeah.
Keep This Between Us is my new sub-series. No, it's like a sub-series. I have like 14 episodes and I just tell stories from my life. The last episode I did is called The Cedar Con Man,
Mhm.
and it's a great story. I'll actually send it to you so you can listen to it as you feel like it.
After I become a Patreon.
No, for you exclusive. I'll just send it to you,
Yeah.
Bibalish.
Yeah.
But it's a fucking hilarious story.
Okay.
And I'm actually realizing that I don't want to give anything away,
Yeah.
but it's hilarious and bizarre and so specific and
That sounds like my thing.
yeah. I still can't believe it actually happened, but they're kind of stories that are just fun. I don't know, and this is why I'm comfortable putting it a bit exclusive, so it's not like this is what I want to say to the world right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, you get access to other things.
Amazing.
But so for anyone listening, please consider becoming a member of our Patreon today and help support this project. طب يلا Doqsi.
Yalla, habibi.
Thank you for this conversation and
Thank you so
soon.
much. Yeah.